And I think the creators are essential in that now because there's so many creators too that you can tap into that have different points of view, are willing to go to the ends of the earth the way that, that Shane did, back in the early days.
The dangerous and unexplored. Hey, good morning, everybody. We are back for day 3 of The Possible Show in beautiful Miami. We have Kerry Tucker, who's the co-president of Virtue, the creative agency within the Vice Media brand. Kerry, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
How's your Possible been so far?
Good.
Final day.
Exhausting and productive and hot and all the things, but It's been amazing, yeah.
Awesome. So, I feel like Vice is on the tip of everybody's tongue again, especially with you guys relaunching the magazine.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, Vice is going back to their roots. They're going to Iran, during like bombings and stuff. It's like, feels a little bit of like, the early days that I think put you guys on the map. Be curious, how much did you guys think about this trend of nostalgia, like where people are leaning into, like kids want to go to the mall and go to the movies and they're wearing stuff from the 90s, and Vice was such a cult phenomenon when it started, and it obviously had a meteoric rise, and definitely some interesting things in the last few years. But it feels like you guys are definitely back on a high swing, I would say.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that that the hard work is paying off. Look, Vice is iconic, right? Any of us that have been in this industry for as long as we have, remember when Vice was born, and it changed the entire media landscape. And so, you asked about nostalgia. I think where we're sitting right now, there's a balance between nostalgia for, the heritage and the legacy of Vice, but also to kind of reimagine the Vice ethos in today's culture, right? Vice has always been cutting edge, alt, left of center, daring, risky, and that applies today. It's just how do we show up for consumers where they are now, different than potentially 20 years ago. So I think there's a balance between nostalgia and honoring what Vice's legacy is, but then also harnessing everything that's been great about Vice and applying it to today's culture and consumer.
Yeah, I love that. I think a lot of digital-first publishers kind of came under threat from, forces of their own making, which is essentially creator culture. Like creators were able to do similar things and create similar-sized audiences, at least on social, with lower costs per video. Yeah. And be personality driven, like a lot of the early, talent on Vice, guys like Tim Pool or others. Be curious if, are you guys thinking about like how do you leverage creators in an innovative way to be correspondents, contributors, licensees?
Yeah, 100%.
Being more of a curator versus maybe the, the driving creative force and kind of letting your audience do the heavy lifting for you in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we would be crazy not to adopt, the creator economy, especially because, so many of these creators can go to places, that Vice used to go, and you can do it en masse, right? Yeah. So, we are everything from our studio productions, scripted and unscripted, to kind of the reimagination of Vice News, right? And if you look what Shane is doing, was just in Greenland, like with, creators really looking at how we tell stories, right? Because I think at the end of the day, all of the Vice media business units are all storytellers in some way, whether it's scripted and unscripted for consumers, our television distribution assets, or the Vice brand group. We're all telling stories for consumers or brands, and I think the creators are essential in that now because there's so many creators too that you can tap into that have different points of view, are willing to go to the ends of the earth the way that, that Shane did, back in the early days.
The dangerous and unexplored.
Yeah, and because everyone can can broadcast now with a phone, right? You don't need to send in massive production teams. You can sort of stealthily go in ways that we couldn't before.
Yeah, safer, less conspicuous.
You know, and different points of view, right? You know that you can capture. Like you said, inexpensively, right, on the fly, very authentically.
But also, like you said, like not making yourself a target or a spectacle. Like if you can blend in with culture and kind of like, you know, document as a local, it allows you to go to more interesting places without,
100%.
You know,
and we can take all those feeds and then edit them, you know, into something pretty magical, you know, that consumers, you know, want to engage with. And right now, more than ever, we need those voices, you know, and we can amplify them.
Yeah, I love it. So tell me about the decision to bring back the magazine, because I think, you know, premium print, as it were called, you know, is having a comeback too, or just analog in general. Kids wanting Polaroid cameras or digital cameras, collecting records and tapes and you know, things that are analog. And then premium print, you know, magazines maybe aren't going to come back the way they were before, you know, a thing this thick with, you know, 2/3 ads. But they're going to come back in a way because people want to take physical things like books and magazines, go to the beach, leave their phone at home, digital detox, have something that's analog and not on a screen. How intentional was that idea of bringing back the magazine, and what were the insights?
Yeah, very. And really the magazine didn't go away completely, right? It had been sort of in, you know, in consistently as part of Vice for over the years, just in different, you know, different levels
forms
of circulation.
Yeah, right.
But I think, you know, to your point, it's, you know, the tangible nature of the magazine. Look, Vice does photography better than anyone else in the world, you know, and I worked in the magazine business for years, you know, and so you have, again, that storytelling through visual, and then, you know, the journalistic, you know, integrity of Vice has always been there. And, you know, as we bring back more physical experiences, even when you think about what's happening with events and experiential, and, you know, we're all in this room together for a reason, right? You know, magazines are a tangible, right, example.
Put them on the tables, and it's a great
and
way.
you flip through them, and they're, you know, they're tactile, and, you know, it's just another touch point, quite literally, you know, for consumers that live in a pretty digital world all the time. And so we just think that there's, you know, a way to reach consumers in a myriad of ways, you know, and magazines is just in our heritage, it's in our legacy, and we're finding that people are enjoying them again. So why not do what we do really well, you know, and put them back in the world.
I love it. I love it. So I connected with your team last week because you were in New York winning an award for some work that you did with Virtue. Can you tell me a little bit about the campaign and how it came together?
Yeah, it was actually not specifically one campaign. We're really proud that Virtue sort of cracked into the Ad Age A-list.
Oh, right. That's right. You're,
which
forgive
celebrates,
me for
not at all, which, you know, celebrates, you know, standout agencies.
Standout agencies of all sizes and persuasions.
And so for the first time in Virtue's history, we have made it onto that list, which is really, really exciting. Thank you. And sort of a culmination of the work that's happened. So not one single, you know, campaign, but the work over the last year, which has been extremely intentional with, you know, clients like Rock Skincare and, you know, and MGA Toys and Delta and Gallo. And so, you know, we've been recognized for that work, which is fantastic. And just a kind of evidence of the transformation, you know, as we're kind of intentionally really trying to think of what makes the most sense for consumers, for brands, you know, how to put out groundbreaking work, how to, you know, cut through the clutter, disrupt, you know, and to have that recognition from one of our, you know, biggest trade publications is an honor, and we were really happy to have it.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Thanks.
What is the difference between having a branded agency that lives within a media company or born from a media company versus a brand studio that does, you know, experiential or creates content on behalf of the publication and partners with brands that works more of an extension of the media arm? Is there a distinct, you know, line of differentiation, or do you guys, you know, put feet in both sides of the sandbox from time to time?
I think sort of, you know, being born out of Vice, right? So Virtue was, you know, kind of born inside of a media group. I think what it allows for you to do is just play with more tools and capabilities that you can offer to brands. So, one, there's an authenticity to Virtue, similar to Vice, where the work that we do is culturally
It's a point of
connected.
view.
It's disruptive. It's a little alt. It's right. So you sort of share the DNA of Vice. So when you're born out of that,
when brands are looking for that type of sensibility or that type of thinking,
yeah,
it's
and
illogical.
then the other thing to quite practically is we can offer brands everything from deep cultural insights through post-production, right? And if you want to do a television series or a documentary, we have a production studio that can bring your brand story to life in a new and different way. We have London Alley, which is not only one of the best commercial production houses in the world, but also the preeminent producer of music videos, right? And so, when you think about all the different ways that we can create, being born inside a media company just allows us to play with all of those tools, which is very different, for an agency who often has to create for brands and then go to production partners or go to a studio.
Or do the
right,
content.
exactly. Or if you want to go to a studio to integrate or to create a story,
You're just that much closer.
we
to
don't
the
have
rest
to
of the
go
pipes.
anywhere, right?
Yeah.
Like we have all of this under one roof, and we're finding that brands are really connecting to that opportunity. Yeah.
Pretty exciting. Well,
is.
Kerry, thanks for coming on and
you so much.
introducing yourself to the audience.
Appreciate
If
it.
people want to follow along with your thinking or connect, where would you like to send folks?
LinkedIn, I guess. Yeah.
Let's go.
Kerry
Awesome.
Tucker,
Thanks
perfect.
for spending some
Thank
time.
you so much. It was
Cheers.
so nice
Enjoy
to
the rest
meet
of
you.
Possible.
Thank you.